we're underneath Lizardi's car, and I want to show you guys our coilover system. We right now have a regular BR type, which consists of a shock individual from the spring in the back. We want to convert the car to true coilover, which means that we'll have the spring on the shock itself instead of the spring on the lower control arm and the shock separately. So we'll have one big thing. Not only we're upgrading to that, but we want to increase stroke, which we're gonna have a longer spring so we can have more travel, more suspension travel in the rear suspension, because the car will squat more and generate more grip while drifting. There's a new rule on Formula Drift for 2017 which only allows us to run 255 width tires. So we're running Achilles 123s, 255 35/18, and the car has to weigh 2,900 pounds. The only way you can have an advantage of this is generate more grip and have more horsepower. We're doing both. We're getting the car almost to 1,000 horsepower to the wheels, and we're upgrading our mechanical grip so we can make the most out of our suspension system and be able to hopefully pull away from our competitors. First thing we gotta do to remove the oil coilovers is we're gonna take off the shock, which is an 18mm bolt on the bottom and 13mm on the top. Oh, that one was easy. Yeah, it did the whole 2-wrench thing, and the other side was like super hard. This side was like la la la, super soft. Now we lower this so we can remove this spring. Here's our spring. Now we got both shocks removed on both sides and the springs. We're gonna go ahead and remove the top hats from the car. That way we can remove the whole assembly and build a new one. So it's literally held up there and down here. The way that the trunk is set up on this car, we have a firewall with the rear mount radiator. So we have one of the bolts for the coilovers on this side. The other one is through the other side on the inside of the trunk. That one you can see a little bit better. And there's the other side. To take apart the shocks, we'll begin by removing the adjustable valve level on the coilover. It's a 14mm nut holding it in place. Then you remove this nut. Then you remove the retainer nut. Now in the same order, you remove the rest of the parts. So nut, washer, then the top part with the bushing, and the bottom part. You have your bump stop. What's that? Next we have these parts. This will be the new top hat, E46 offset bushing thing. Gently open it, just like a Christmas present. All right, so we're gonna go from this mount. We're gonna go from this mount to this mount. You see how it's offset? The reason they do that is so it brings the shock a little further away from the wheel well, so you have room to fit the spring on the shock, which normally is not there. Now it comes down to the actual shock assembly. We already have our retainer ring. We already have a retainer ring for the lower mount. This is the mount that goes to the knuckle. Then you just screw it on somehow if it wants to go in. Are you serious? It doesn't want to go in. Oh, there we go. Use the gravity to aid the thing to go in. Now you spin it and spin it. I'm gonna go ahead and put it all the way in. That way we have our limit on the lowest setting. Then if it's not low enough, then we're gonna have to switch out to a shorter shock. So we just hit rock bottom, and this is the shortest I can make the shock now. Next we got our spring retainer ring and plastic nylon bushing and our lock nut for it. First install a lock nut. Then comes your spring retainer ring. Will be a lower spring retainer ring. Just take this off. And install your nylon bushing. This will reduce like binding noise and stuff on the shock, so it has quiet and smooth operation. Next, install your bump stop. Next we got the dust boot. And now we can finally install our spring. We're gonna be using 4K springs on the back. We're going to be using 4K springs in the back. You can tell this literally the last number. It's what literally tells you what springs you're running. We will be using Swiss springs later on, but these are just for fitment. Then literally just put it like this. Note now that the spring is sitting on the nylon, the spring is sitting on the nylon seat. That way it doesn't make noise or grinds or anything while the car is operating. Now it comes time to install the top hats. This literally goes inverted. Pay close attention to the order that this thing comes installed with. So this part goes with a skinny part in. Then this goes like this. Notice it also has another nylon bushing on the top. Also, the nut is a special nut which has a self-centering part. Make sure to loosen the spring. That way there's free play on the top, so you can put your top hat all the way in. Now that you have it in, preload the spring. just enough so there's no free play on it and it's not just like this. There's no bounce on it. And that is how we preload our springs for drifting. This is what our final true coilover setup looks like. We have our offset top mounts. Let's see what this looks like on the car now. We gotta test height. If not, we're gonna try a different shock. And then if not enough, we're gonna have another even shorter shock for it. Let's go ahead and install these. We gotta feed them through the bottom. This is how the car looks with the old shocks that I had before. It's way too high for what we want. So right now the car is slammed in the front and super high on the back. That means we're gonna try the smaller shock cartridge. That way we can get the car lower. Right, Taylor also gave me this one. Is our medium size shock. And then he gave me an even shorter one, which I think I'm gonna have to just end up using the shortest one. Because even though I adjusted the coilover adjustment all the way in, so it's at the lowest position, it's still too high. If I put the smallest one, then if it's too low, I can still bring it up a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and try the smallest one and see how it works. We achieved our goal. We got the height that we were looking for, but we have another problem. The problem that we have right now is that the upper lower control arm is hitting on the frame. So we're gonna have to either see if somebody sells an aftermarket one that's curved, or I'm gonna have to make a custom upper control arm for it so it can have clearance in against the body and against the chassis, and we can get the car as low as we want it. So right now that's perfect. The axle is almost perfectly straight, so we got full mechanical function on this. Alright, so we got the measurements that we needed for BC Racing. Now I gotta take those off again tomorrow, return the parts that I borrowed to measure the kit, and we're gonna order 2 of these sets but in ER. So the ERs have the external reservoir, so we can adjust dampening and rebound. So that way we can adjust the rebound and bound dampening on the coilover, so we can get precise adjustments made. I'm gonna go ahead and end this video now. I gotta get to editing, and let's see what else we got in store on the next video.